world of entertainment as far as perverts and pedophiles and all of the topics of what we've been discussing. It's pretty ripped up because of the devastation of what I've been through the past few days. I've experienced things like never before. I mean, I've been silenced my whole life, but just over the past few days since I made that announcement, I've been arrested.
In an unprecedented conclusion to what prosecutors have called the most complex case of entertainment industry corruption ever uncovered, former child star Corey Feldman has been sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The sentence was handed down yesterday by federal judge Raymond Ortiz, following a marathon 3-month trial that captivated the nation and sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Feldman, 52, once beloved for his roles in classic 1980s films, including The Goonies and Stand By Me, stood motionless as the verdict was read in the packed Los Angeles courtroom. The former actor was convicted on 27 counts, including racketeering, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, fraud, and operating a criminal enterprise designed to extort millions from the entertainment industry through an elaborate blackmail operation. The court cannot ignore the calculated nature of these crimes, nor their devastating impact on countless victims, Judge Ortiz stated during the 5-hour sentencing hearing. What began as a purported crusade for justice devolved into a sophisticated criminal enterprise that weaponized trauma and exploited vulnerable individuals for financial gain and personal vendettas. The FBI investigation, codenamed Operation Spotlight, began 4 years ago after several high-profile entertainment executives approached federal authorities with evidence of what they described as systematic extortion attempts. The investigation eventually expanded to include financial crimes units from multiple agencies, uncovering what prosecutors described as a labyrinthine network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and digital evidence designed to launder both money and information. Special Agent Catherine Reeves, who led the FBI investigation, detailed during testimony how what initially appeared to be legitimate advocacy work by Feldman gradually transformed into a criminal operation. Our investigation revealed that Mr. Feldman had created an elaborate system for identifying potential targets, gathering compromising information, and monetizing that information through various channels, Reeves testified. What made this case particularly complex was how the legitimate aspects of his advocacy were used to shield and enable the criminal enterprise. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Marcus Jennings, presented over 11,000 pages of evidence and called 84 witnesses during the trial. The case they constructed revealed how Feldman had allegedly built a network of operatives who would approach entertainment industry figures with vague allegations, followed by demands for settlement payments to prevent public accusations. Mr. Feldman systematically exploited the very real issues of child safety in the entertainment industry to create a lucrative criminal enterprise, Jennings told the jury during his closing argument. He weaponized public sympathy, media attention, and the legitimate trauma of real victims to create a perfect smokescreen for what was, at its core, an elaborate extortion operation. The trial took an unexpected turn when several former associates of Feldman agreed to testify in exchange for immunity or reduced sentences. These witnesses provided damning testimony about the inner workings of what they described as the network, Feldman's term for his organization. Julia Winters, a former assistant who worked closely with Feldman for 3 years, provided particularly devastating testimony about the operation's methodology. There was a specific playbook, Winters testified. Potential targets were researched extensively to identify vulnerabilities. Past associations, production timelines that coincided with Corey's work, even rumors within the industry. Once a target was selected, the network would begin building what Corey called the pressure file, anything that could be used as leverage. Winters described how advocacy work was used to provide cover for the criminal operation. The public-facing foundation was real, and some of the work was genuine, she testified. That's what made it so effective as a cover. Corey would use media appearances, discussing industry problems, as opportunities to send implicit messages to targets that they could be next. It was all carefully choreographed. The prosecution presented evidence that Feldman had developed an elaborate system for approaching potential targets, beginning with vague allegations delivered through intermediaries, followed by escalating pressure, and eventually explicit financial demands. Communications recovered from encrypted devices revealed detailed discussions of pressure points for specific executives and production companies. Financial forensic expert Dr. Raymond Chen testified about the complex money movement uncovered during the investigation. We identified over $37 million flowing through a network of at least 14 shell companies across 7 countries, Chen testified. The funds would move through multiple jurisdictions before eventually reaching accounts controlled by Mr. Feldman or his closest associates. The level of financial sophistication suggests professional assistance in establishing this structure. The investigation uncovered several properties purchased through shell companies, including a compound in Costa Rica, a private island in the Caribbean, and luxury apartments in London and Tokyo. Authorities also seized extensive documentation of what prosecutors called contingency plans, detailed strategies for responding to various scenarios including investigation, media exposure, or resistance from targets. The case took a dramatic turn when investigators discovered what they called the Vault, a climate-controlled storage facility in Nevada containing meticulously organized records of every operation, payment, and target dating back nearly 15 years. The facility, registered to a shell company 3 levels removed from Feldman, contained digital and physical evidence that prosecutors called the operational heart of the enterprise. The level of documentation was extraordinary, testified FBI forensic analyst Thomas Hargrove. We recovered detailed dossiers on over 200 entertainment industry figures, including personal information, daily routines, family details, and specific vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Each file contained what was labeled an approach strategy and evaluation assessment, essentially how to target them and how much to demand. Particularly damning was the recovery of what prosecutors called the playbook, a 64-page document outlining the entire operational methodology of the network, including scripts for initial approaches, escalation tactics, and contingency plans for various responses. The document included sections titled Pressure Points, Media Leverage, and Financial Extraction Methodologies. The defense, led by high-profile attorney Eleanor Michaels, attempted to portray Feldman as a troubled but well-intentioned advocate whose methods may have crossed ethical lines, but never legal ones. My client has spent decades trying to expose real problems in an industry that systematically silenced him, Michaels argued. His methods may seem unorthodox, even aggressive, but they were born of desperation in the face of institutional resistance, not criminal intent. This defense strategy collapsed when prosecutors produced recorded conversations between Feldman and associates explicitly discussing payment amounts, methods of increasing pressure on targets, and strategies for ensuring silence from those who had paid. In one particularly damaging recording, Feldman could be heard saying, "We're not running a charity here. If they want this to disappear, the price just went up to 8 figures. Their choice. Pay now or be destroyed publicly. Either way, we win." The prosecution called several victims who testified anonymously behind screens about their experiences being targeted by Feldman's operation. One entertainment executive described receiving increasingly threatening communications, followed by explicit demands for $12 million to prevent public accusations. The initial approach seemed like a legitimate concern that deserved investigation, the executive testified, but it quickly became clear that no investigation would ever be enough. The only resolution they would accept was payment. Another victim, a successful producer, described how the operation had targeted not just him, but his family members. "They approached my college-age daughter, claiming to be journalists investigating her father's past," he testified. "They began showing up at my elderly parents' home. The message was clear: pay or everyone you care about becomes collateral damage." The trial featured expert testimony from psychologists specializing in trauma and advocacy, who explained how legitimate movements for accountability can be weaponized and exploited. Dr. Sarah Levinson, a renowned expert on advocacy organizations, testified about the sophisticated way Feldman's operation blended legitimate concerns with criminal activity. What made this operation particularly insidious was its exploitation of real trauma and legitimate social concerns, Levinson testified. By positioning himself as a champion for victims, Mr. Feldman created a shield against criticism. Anyone questioning his methods could be accused of attempting to silence victims or protect abusers. It was a nearly perfect system of insulation for criminal activity. The jury deliberated for just 7 days before returning guilty verdicts on all 27 counts. Following the verdict, jury foreman Michael Delaney spoke briefly to reporters. "The evidence was overwhelming and meticulously presented," Delaney said. "What began as a seemingly legitimate advocacy effort transformed into something unrecognizable, a criminal enterprise that exploited the very victims it claimed to champion." In addition to the life sentence, Judge Ortiz ordered the forfeiture of all assets connected to the criminal enterprise, estimated at over $42 million, to be distributed to verified victims and legitimate organizations working to protect child performers. The judge also ordered the dissolution of all entities connected to Feldman's operations. The sentencing has prompted soul-searching throughout the entertainment industry, with multiple studios and production companies announcing new protocols for addressing historical allegations and supporting legitimate advocacy efforts. Several industry organizations have announced the establishment of independently monitored reporting systems designed to address real concerns while preventing exploitation. For fans who grew up watching Feldman's performances in beloved films, the case represents a complex tragedy. The transformation of a talented child star into the architect of a criminal enterprise that exploited the very issues he had personally experienced. Cultural commentators have noted the case represents a cautionary tale about how legitimate grievances can be weaponized and how advocacy without accountability can become corrupted. In his final statement before sentencing, Feldman remained defiant, insisting that his methods were necessary in an industry that had systematically protected powerful abusers. "You're not punishing a criminal today," he told the court. "You're silencing the only person willing to speak uncomfortable truths about an industry built on exploitation. History will vindicate my methods when the full truth finally emerges." Judge Ortiz, in delivering the sentence, acknowledged the complexity of the case while emphasizing the clear criminal nature of Feldman's actions. The court recognizes that legitimate grievances existed and that Mr. Feldman himself may have experienced trauma during his career, Ortiz stated. However, this sentence is not about silencing advocacy. It is about holding accountable someone who built a criminal enterprise that extorted millions through systematic intimidation, deception, and exploitation of others' pain. As Feldman was led from the courtroom for the final time, the once vibrant child star appeared diminished, a shadow of the charismatic performer who had captivated audiences decades ago. For the former actor who spent years promising to expose Hollywood's darkest secrets, the final revelation proved to be the elaborate criminal operation he himself had created. An operation that has now cost him his freedom for the remainder of his life. The case will likely be studied for years by law enforcement agencies, advocacy organizations, and media ethics programs as a complex example of how legitimate advocacy can become corrupted, how trauma can be weaponized, and how the public's desire for accountability can be exploited by those with criminal intent. For Corey Feldman, once beloved by a generation of moviegoers, the final scene of his public life has ended, not with the redemption he sought, but with a prison sentence that ensures he will never walk free again.